June 13. Who killed Jesus? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not with him graciously give us all things? Romans 8:32. One of my friends who used to be a pastor in Illinois was preaching to a group of prisoners in a state prison during Holy Week several years ago. At one point in his message, he paused and asked the men if they knew who killed Jesus. Some said the soldiers did, some said the Jews did, some said Pilate. After there was silence, my friend said simply, his father killed him. That's what the first half of Romans 8:32 says. God did not spare his own son, but handed him over to death. This Jesus was delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, Acts 2:23. Isaiah 53 puts it even more bluntly. We esteemed him stricken, smitten by God. It was the will of the Lord to crush him. He, his Father, has put him to grief, Isaiah 53:4 and 10. Or, as Romans 3:25 says, God put him forward as a propitiation by his blood. Just as Abraham lifted the knife over the chest of his son Isaac, but then spared his son because there was a ram in the thicket, so God the Father lifted his knife over the chest of his own son, Jesus, but did not spare him because he was the ram. He was the substitute. God did not spare his own son because it was the only way he could spare us and still be a just and holy God. The guilt of our transgressions, the punishment of our iniquities, the curse of our sin would have brought us inescapably to the destruction of hell. But God did not spare his own son. He gave him up to be pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities and crucified for our sins. This verse, Romans 8:32, is the most precious verse in the Bible to me, because the foundation of the all-encompassing promise of God's future grace is that the Son of God bore in his body all my punishment and all my guilt and all my condemnation and all my blame and all my fault and all my corruption, so that I might stand before a great and holy God, forgiven, reconciled, justified, accepted, and the beneficiary of unspeakable promises of pleasure forever and ever at his right hand.